Go. We are good to go.
Excellent.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome, world. Today is November the 19th, and would you believe it is 6:25 p.m. And we told you that we were going to come and speak to you at 6:30, but sometimes you're right on time. Sometimes you ahead of time, and sometimes you can be a little after the time. But today we are live and direct here at a different book list cultural center. I am so pleased to be in conversation this evening, this Friday evening, a payday. Oh my God, Fridays is always about a payday. And we are going to be talking this evening about your kids and their money. So to all the families who are watching us and to all the people who are tuning in, I hope that you will have questions for us. I hope that you are going to be so excited about what we are going to drop on you that you're going to go out and pick up this incredible, precious thing and put it in the hands of lots of young people and in families. But to get us started here at a different book list cultural center, the People's Residence, I'm Ida Sadu, and now I am going to give the land acknowledgement. The board and staff and supporters of a different book list cultural center, the People's Residence, acknowledge the original caretakers and storytellers of this land, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis, and the Wendat First Nations. We want to thank these mighty nations for allowing us to build our homes, our dreams, our families, and our aspirations in this land. And we pledge to walk hand in hand with these mighty nations as they journey on the road to self-determination and social justice. And having said that, now we are going to start this evening. And you probably thinking, who is Ida speaking to today? Well, of course, some people know and some people don't know. So in case you don't know, let me tell you. Today I'm in conversation with author. Doesn't it sound good to say that?
Good.
Author.
That sounds nice.
Author, and you document and you put it down on a paper, you live forever. And so joining me is the author, Clifton Corbin. Who is Clifton Corbin? Drawing on his master's in business administration, MBA, his financial experience and practices with his children, Clifton Corbin brings to you a guide for the modern parent. Whoa, no old school here, modern parent. In this book, he will show you how to educate your children on the basics of money management, such as allowances, first jobs, borrowing, credit, and investing in ways that make sense to parents and, of course, appeals to kids. Clifton's innovative approach starts by identifying teachable moments during everyday activities. So good when you can relate reality to text, make theory practical. The book will show you how to involve your children, not in an exam, but in an innovative and fun way where they can learn the basic concepts of money management. Wherever you are in this world, put your hands together or give a big shout out in the comfort of your home to the author, Clifton Corbin.
Thank you.
Good evening, Clifton, and how you doing again?
Doing very well. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
There you
Thank you.
And hey, and I've got to show the book, really important,
yes.
Right? There you go, beautiful, clean cover. And of course, there's a little bit of green on it, which always says money, just the money. So really good. So to begin, Clifton, give us a little background about yourself. Where do you hail from? What part of the country am I speaking to you?
Sure. I'm currently speaking to you from Toronto, from the basement of my home in Toronto. I was born in Grimsby, Ontario. My parents are both Trinidad and Tobago nationals, so I've got a West Indian background, but I was born and raised in this country of ours.
Okay, well, I'm feeling the wonderful brick that I can see in the home. It looks very heritage, but it gives warmth and it gives character. Growing up here and listening to the stories of your parents, and those moments when they talked about finance. Have you ever heard the word susu before?
Of course, of
Fern hat.
course.
Tell me about that and that experience in your childhood growing up, and how does it inform you today?
So I can't speak directly to a Susu because my parents, like I said, I was born here, so the Susus probably stayed back in Trinidad as far as I know. But I was fortunate, like I say many times in my book, I was very fortunate. Both my parents were always open and willing to speak to me about their finances and give me stories about how they grew up, like typical, I guess, immigrant stories, first generation stories that you hear. They came from less privilege to make a better home and a better opportunities for their kids. So they spoke often of, you know, the trials and tribulations of what it was like when they were growing up in Trinidad, and all the struggles and trials and tribulations of immigrating to Canada. So I was very attuned to the the privilege that I was given, the opportunities that I was given. I know their stories, but I never had to live their stories, and I was very fortunate for that.
Yeah. Well, one beautiful thing, Clifton, I want to tell you is that right now there is an explosion of susus all across the city and all across the province, as women and economists and people in finance are kind of reclaiming that or trying to elevate susus to a whole nother level. But this is a moment that I'm curious about. So the doorbell rings, or you drove to the printer, or the UPS van rolled up and there was a box, and your heart is beating fast and you opened the box. Tell me, how was that experience when you saw the book in print and you held it in your hand for the first time?
It's funny. So many people have been calling it my book baby. And I've never used the term myself, but it definitely feels very much like something that you give birth to. Like, it's the words that you've written down and you've looked at and you've revised and you've tried to perfect as best you can. And with each stage of the process, you give it a little bit more life and you let a little bit more of the world see it. With, you know, first few readers are looking at it, and then there's a first couple of editors are looking at it. But that moment when it actually arrived, it is breathtaking. You kind of stop and you're like, wow, this is the culmination of a lot of effort, a lot of hard work. And I mention it in the acknowledgments of my book, but the writing process itself, the writing of a book is very, you know, solo. It's very isolating. You're doing it by yourself. It's you and your research. It's you and your keyboard. It's you just, you know, you and your screen. But that's where the isolation has to stop. And that's where the isolation kind of stops, because after that point, you need to start telling people about it. You need to have people reading it. So as much as it was a very, you know, encouraging and amazing feeling to see the book, it's been amazing and encouraging just for all the support that I've been getting from friends and family, folks who are on this call, folks who, you know, send me messages on Instagram and LinkedIn. So it's the culmination of it is it's phenomenal. Again, it's the combining of all these different efforts and all these different people who've decided to support me and support this effort. It's been incredible.
Mhm. Why now? Why now do you think that it is important for a book, your kids, their money? And what sparked this idea? I know that you have children yourself. Was it something they said? What sparked this idea?
So it's not why now. It's always been, there's always been the need to talk to our children about money. Depends on the generation you're in. That might have been, you know, for for some people. It might not have been encouraged. The impetus for me to write it was my story. Is, like I mentioned, I had two wonderful parents who were always willing to talk to me about money. I was always interested and curious about money growing up. And then I went off to school and somehow managed to mismanage my money. And I looked back after I figured out that situation, and I said, well, how did someone who had, you know, such great support from his parents and such an eagerness to learn, and I think I'm as bright as the next one. So how did someone like me, who had all those opportunities, still manage to make a mess of his finances? And I said to myself, it's probably because, as much as I was eager to learn at a young age, I didn't have all of the knowledge that I needed to enter adulthood. I had part of it. I knew how to earn. I had a good idea of what to do as far as saving, but as far as debt management goes, I didn't have enough information. As far as the need to have wealth creation, I didn't have enough information. So the need was there from the beginning. Like I think I said, I think all children need this in their lives. I think all children should be getting this, because at some point they're not going to be children anymore. They're going to be out into the world. They're going to be living on their own. They're going to be managing their own money. So in my opinion, it doesn't make sense to wait until they're in that situation to give them the tools, to give them the resources, to have these conversations. So the rationale for doing it now is because if not now, when? It has to be now. It has to be yesterday, in my opinion. They grow up quickly. I was commenting to you earlier how when I wrote this book, my son was 7. I look now, he's 9, and I'm like, he's grown so much. He's so much more experienced, even just with managing money, with anything. He's just, as they grow, they learn more. And if we're not giving them these tools when they're eager to learn it, when we have an opportunity to influence them, then we're going to miss those opportunities. So that's the reason why now.
I loved your answer because it was honest. And I like the fact that you were able to show us strengths and weaknesses. You were able to show us just in that time, success and failure. And this is so important when people speak about finance and when people speak about money. And as a writer, and now that you've put yourself out in the world, so I welcome the honesty of that answer.
And to that point, if I could just interrupt, I think that's something that I want, and I hope I convey as well in my book, is that when we speak to our children, we need to speak about those successes and those failures, because as we all know, we learn a lot from our failures. And if we're only giving our children one or the other, we're depriving them of the full spectrum of our experience. I comment often how we are the best equipped to teach our children, because we're, as their parents, we're their best opportunity to learn these lessons. So it's giving them both the good and the bad, to make sure that I take that back, giving them both the successes and the failures, not the good and the bad, but giving them the full range of our experience is what will best equip them.
Mm-hmm. One of the things too that I want to raise with you, sometimes it's in terms of language, like right now, for example, when things go bad, people say, oh my gosh, so everything went south. And sometimes when I sit in a meeting and I think, well, how's this possible? People go south to have a good time and feel good. So if it's bad, why would it go south? No, I think it needs to go north. That's what we should be saying. So, it goes north, not south. But here's a question that I am curious about. When people, oftentimes when they seem to speak, and I'm going to speak specifically about the community of African descent, the Black community, or Caribbean Canadians, we talk about financial literacy. Mm-hmm. When we speak to other cultural groups, we talk about wealth management, money management. Mm-hmm. But when people are addressing our community and our children or whoever, we use the language financial literacy. Will you comment on that for me?
So I believe they are two distinct things. And to me, and the way I've written the book, I've seen them as two distinct things. Wealth management, wealth creation is a part. It fits under the umbrella of financial literacy. As I mentioned earlier, financial literacy for me, it's wealth creation and understanding the need for wealth creation, especially within the Black community, of managing and being aware of how to accumulate wealth, especially across generations. But wealth accumulation is only part of it. And it's kind of cyclical in that as you accumulate wealth or as you gain financial literacy, you will gain financial security. And as you gain financial security, you will likely be able to gain more wealth. And it kind of goes in a circle. But when I say it's still an umbrella with regards to financial literacy, because financial literacy includes how do you secure that wealth once you have it? How do you gain that wealth using, debt? And manage debt to make sure that you're gaining wealth and not putting yourself into a hole. So financial literacy, in my opinion, is the umbrella term. It encompasses wealth and wealth creation and wealth management, but it isn't wealth management and wealth creation isn't all unto themselves what financial literacy is. That's just a piece.
And write in the book, gotta keep showing up, and put in the book together too. What part of your MBA experience and your background did you bring to the book? What did you draw? What were those moments that you went back into the institutions and think, this was something that I was taught. This is something that it is valuable for people to know. And then we're going to dive in to make those kids all excited about the activities and the different things in the book. But I'm curious now of how to bring in your background in the business world.
Sure. So I would love to say that there's this one chapter or this one sentence, but if I did that, I'd be making something up. The book is very much a culmination of all my experiences. I couldn't pull one thing out and say it's because of that. While in the book, you will see very specific stories throughout my life that I think highlight different instances of financial literacy. I'd be hard pressed to say this is the one thing. So as I mentioned, I've worked as a business consultant. I've managed many $million budgets. I've worked as a financial analyst. I've managed and dealt with different things with regards to money, but I've also lived these experiences. The experiences that you read about in the book are lived experiences. I love, like, my dad is an educator, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say his lesson to me as an educator is what you want to learn is how to learn. And I feel like that is what I've taken from all of my education, both my undergraduate in computer engineering and my master's in business, and all of all the learning I've done independently outside of those two degrees. I've put all of that into the book. If you ask my wife, she'll say, I'm always walking around with headphones on because I'm always listening to a podcast. It's usually about economics. It's usually it's just what I do. I'm always trying to glean more information, listen to another story, read another article, because when I say I'm passionate about this, I don't say it facetiously. I mean, I am passionate about this. This is the thing that has driven me for some time. I didn't realize it. If I did, I probably would have wrote this book a couple of years ago, but I've always been going back to this as something that drives me. So I would be, like I said, I'd be hard pressed to say this is the thing. It is all of it. It is the whole package. All of it is driven from what I've learned as an MBA student. All of it is driven from what I've learned as the child of my parents. All of it is driven by the father of my two children upstairs. It's all came together for this book, which is why I think it was so, I hate to say, easy for me to write it, because it was a part of me. It was always there. It was always ready to come out. So I think I don't have an answer for you as far as this is the thing. It's because it's all of the things.
Oh, no. Well, that is fantastic, because it's a big answer. So take me into the book. So now I've gone and I've picked up the book. Sure. I've attended your in-person launch or something like this, and I've got the book in my hand, and I'm a parent, and I'm thinking, okay, it's laid out in 3 parts. Okay, 5 parts. Okay, wait, okay. So talk to me about this book and tell parents out there what are some of the cool things in the book and how we get engaged. Yeah. So
I just talked quite a bit about how the book came to be.
That's right.
But I tried to write the book so that, one, financial literacy, that you could hear that term and immediately tune out. Like, it's not something that gets most people driven. I know I'm the exception to that rule. It is not something that turns a lot of people on, and I get that. So I've intentionally written the book with a lot of stories, a lot of narratives, because it is the story that gets you engaged. And I mentioned that in the book also, so that you know that when you're talking to your kids about finances, talk to them in terms of stories, the things that happen to you. But that aside, the book is written to take you through the different pieces of what I think are critical pieces of financial literacy: wealth creation, earning, saving, securing what you have, using what you have, because that's a big piece of it. You know, we all think as soon as I have money, I'll know how to spend it, but we have a lot of feelings tied up with how we spend our money, and that needs to be addressed too, especially when it comes to our kids. But I've written the book in a way that if you have a child who is showing any interest anywhere in the spectrum of what financial literacy is, from I'm curious about my first job, or I want to start donating money because I saw someone on the side of the street and it made me feel bad. The book is written in a way that no matter where you are or where your child is on that journey, you can pick up that piece. You can go to that section and say, I just want to learn a little bit more about debt, or I want to learn a little bit more about what I should be talking to my kids about when it comes to savings, or what are the do's and don'ts of an allowance, so I know how to start giving them a chance to practice with money. So it's written in a way that you can jump in at any section if you want. Or if you're just interested, like I said, I tried to make it as narrative as possible. I tried to put it also in the story arc of my life and how I learned and how I struggled and how I relearned how to deal with money. So it starts very much with, I was how to earn money and how to get money and how to acquire money. But it also then talks about how to make sure you secure what you've got. And it also ends, and this is, I think it comes at the end, but it's one of those things you do sometimes save the best for last. It talks about why it's so necessary to have appreciation and gratitude for the things that we have. I don't know if that's often mentioned when people talk about financial literacy, and I think that's a miss, because having an appreciation for what you have is what you can hedge, what you can use as a hedge for that keeping up with the Joneses. So the book kind of takes that story arc of where I was when I started as a youth and where I am now, where I'm having this conversation with you. All I've been saying today to all of the many people who've been mentioning my book and posting about my book is thank you. All I have now is gratitude, because I'm so grateful for all the things that people have been doing for me. I'm grateful for my family upstairs, for my family online. So the book is written in a way where you could read it from end to end if you want, or if you've got a curious child, you could dive into any one of those sections and just pick up the pieces you need. I also made sure that each one of the different sections has specific actions. So if you're reading the book and you're like, I get the idea, I get the concept, but what do I do with this? What do I do with my child now? It has activities for you to do. So go play this game. Maybe it's a role-playing game. Maybe it's picking up Monopoly. Maybe it's something else. But it has specific activities for you to do with your child. Or if there's maybe some additional resources you might want, maybe there's a picture book that might really dive deeper into this subject, and I include that in the book as well. So each section will end with some key takeaways, some things that you really want to make sure you got from that chapter, or what I hope you got from that chapter or that part. And then it will go into some activities that you can do with your child. And if you want to dive deeper, I am very aware that I am not the end all or be all on this subject, nor do I ever think I should be. There's a ton of resources on these subjects. I don't know if anyone else is in Canada, but it's National Finance Month here in Canada. There's a website out there. There's a national website out there with financial resources. I point to it on some of my social media. So there's a lot of resources out there. And in my book, I use some of those different resources, again, to highlight some of the different things that parents can be doing with their child if they want to dive a little deeper into any of the content.
So I'm 9 years old and I want to borrow money, and I want to raise in my allowance. What's your advice for me?
You're 9 years old and you want to borrow money and you want to raise in your allowance. One, you are likely my son. Two, again, there's a section specifically in the book, and I think it's one of the sections that I'm probably most close to because it deals a lot with debt, and I feel like debt is one of those subjects that can really trip people up. That is one of those tools that if you don't use it properly, and it's just that it's a tool, right? And we've heard the sayings before, right? Like a hammer could be used for good and it can be used for bad. That is the same thing. So if you're asking about borrowing, I would do, and again, I spell this out pretty explicitly in the book as well, start lending to your children. I have laid out step by step how you start to lend to your children. If they're already receiving an allowance, I usually, for my child, I will do 1 month or 1 week's worth of an allowance will be their credit limit. And then I try to, if they're borrowing, we make sure that all the stipulations of their borrowing is laid out very clearly. We agree to it beforehand so that they are very aware of what they're getting themselves into. The repayment term should be spelled out so they know what they're getting themselves into. But the funny thing is that I really encourage this, because if you think about it, when you're let's say a young adult or just going off to university, you may never have borrowed any money in your life. You may never have repaid a loan in your life, maybe a $5 here or something to a friend, but the actual repaying and building that habit of repaying is not something that comes, I don't think it comes, it didn't come naturally to me. I shouldn't say it doesn't come naturally. It didn't come naturally to me. And that's part of the problems I got into as a young adult. So I really encourage, so if you came to me as a 9-year-old and said you wanted to borrow, I'd be like, yes, this is great. I'd be very encouraging. And again, with your other piece of your question with regards to the allowance and a raise in your allowance, that's one of those pieces. And this is one of the things I really want to make clear too. It's financial literacy and personal finance. I love the word personal finance because it is personal, right? So your situation is very specific to you. When I say you, I'm talking about your family. So if you're asking for a raise and it's within my means to do it and it doesn't hurt my budget and it doesn't, it makes sense for me, then maybe we do it. But again, that's an opportunity for a conversation between you and me to say, this is where we are. This is how we prioritize our money. This is why we have to prioritize our money. Here are the needs for our family. And this new item may be a need for you, but for our family, we need to see where it fits. In the book, I also give, guidelines and high-level guidelines of, what typical allowances are given in, with regards to stats and all the rest, but it really depends specifically on your family situation. So if you can do it and it makes sense and it doesn't, it doesn't cause financial strife and strain in your family, and it makes sense for your child, because again, you don't want to be giving them the keys to the car, but you do want to give them opportunities to practice. And that's another key thing that I want people to take from the book. Give them opportunities to practice before they have to do it for real. Because that's when, if they make a misstep when they're practicing with you, no harm, no foul. But it's when they're out on their own and they've got a credit score that they have to manage, and they've got car payments that they might have to deal with, or some other financial obligation that they're dealing with, missteps then can cause serious harm. So I would encourage those conversations. If you were my 9-year-old, I'd be like, yes, let's talk about this. Let's figure out what makes sense for us. And I know just because of this conversation, when I go upstairs, my son's going to be asking me for a raise on his allowance. So thank you for that.
Well, you know what? You tell your son that I'm going to get a percentage of
Finder's fee.
Right? Yeah.
Finder's fee.
He's listening. Percentage. I would say maybe he's 9. Okay, so I'm going to be good. I would say like even a 2%, and that's low, low interest like that. So I'm going to take a percentage of that
Sure.
because I inspired him to question. One of the things too that you deal in the book, or you reference, is insurance. Insurance is a big, scary word. I remember once driving in the car with my daughter, and she said, right at, I know exactly, at the intersection of Bathurst and Glencairn. I will always remember that. And she's kicking the back of my seat and she says, "Ma, what's insurance?" And I'm struggling to think, how do I explain insurance to I think she was about 5, to a 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working it. And suddenly I'm about to say something and she says, "Is it like buying a house and you never live in it?" Exactly, that's insurance. Like, how was she informed about that? That seemed to me multiple conversations she had heard over time and sort of in a jigsaw puzzle put them together. But for a 5-year-old to explain to me that insurance meant for her buying a home, but you never live in it, I thought was brilliant. I didn't need to explain insurance anymore. But how do you present insurance? Because it's that scary thing people roll upon you. You need insurance, all kinds of different insurance now.
Sure.
I need insurance just to talk to you. So how do we explain what that principle of insurance is?
So I usually start with why it's necessary. So we started a moment ago talking about wealth creation, and wealth creation, I think it's critical, it's necessary. But without properly insuring ourselves, we put it at risk. We put whatever we build at risk. I believe the way I explained it in the book, and I'm paraphrasing because I wrote the book a while ago, but it's basically, and you hear the term in insurance circles as well, you're joining a pool. You're basically saying a group of people are all going to put a little bit of money into this pool. And if any one of us has a problem, let's say it's car insurance, let's say one of us gets into an accident, you take money from that pool to get yourself fixed up, get the new car, get the scuff buffed out, make sure your family's okay, what have you. The house not being lived in, that's the assumption that no one gets into any accidents. But I think given life, like just the inherent risks with life, insurance is critical. There's going to be times when we're ill or we have an accident or something bad happens. And I think that's why insurance is often it's scary. It's similar to the conversations about wills and why people often try to avoid those conversations, because it forces you to acknowledge that life has risks. It forces you to acknowledge that bad things could happen. It forces you to be aware that life is finite, and all these scary things that we often try to, and for good reason, we just kind of put to the side, because those aren't the happy thoughts. Those aren't the someone's getting married. That's not the there's a new baby in the family. Those aren't the happy things are all going well thoughts. These are the moments where things are not going well. But without properly insuring yourselves, you make those bad times so much worse. Like anyone who's had an accident or has had anything, any ill fate, who was insured or wasn't insured, will quickly realize the need for insurance. So again, I would explain it, I often explain it as that pool, right? We're pooling our resources together to secure ourselves for those times in our lives where things just didn't go the way we hoped. We got sideswiped or something bad happened. But like I said, I don't think insurance is scary. I don't think the concept is too hard for folks to grasp. I think what it is a lot of people just don't want to face that piece, because it is scary. It is acknowledging some hard times, or acknowledging that hard times may come. And no one wants to think about that. And I get that. I do get that. But I think the risk is way too high not to appropriately, look at what could happen and then properly insure yourself for it. Now, what type of insurance? It all depends on, again, it's personal. It's what your situation is. Are you driving? How old are you? Are you in good health? There's a lot of different variables that factor into what type of insurances you need and what type of insurance you should get. But again, when you think about the cost of the insurance versus the cost of not having it when you need it, it's the equations, it's simple for me. And I hope in the book that I've written, it will be simple for other folks as well, and hopefully simple for them to then explain to their children.
In listening to you, I keep thinking of the many contracts, and this is such a beautiful thing, that you could have with your children and with your family. I could see the excitement of the game. I could see the lawyers emerging as people refer to the contracts on specific points. So oral skills, written skills, debating skills,
negotiating.
Right.
Right? We're talking salaries, we're talking negotiating contract. Yes. It all stems from these early conversations we have with our children.
So for all the wonderful people listening and who will view this, here is an incredible moment where we can create contracts, exciting things, write them down on paper. Everybody's armed with their contract, get it stamped with the family stamp. Who's going to design that family stamp and crest that goes on that contract? These are all of some of the exciting possibilities that are being offered up, and to trigger our imagination of how we can best communicate the management, money management, and an understanding of finance being put forward by Clifton Corbin. So tell me, Clifton, what is like the most exciting activity, the one that you love to be engaged with kids, or, you see a group of kids and you think like, okay, I'm going to open up the space with this. This is going to rock their world. Is it Bitcoin? No. Tell me what it is.
That's a hard question. You know what? I'm going to hedge on this one too, because it depends. So a couple months ago, I was asked to speak to a grade 10 class, and we spoke about Bitcoin. And I was talking to a grade 10 class, so I didn't see any faces. It was a bunch of black squares on a screen, but I could see the enthusiasm as they started to comprehend what it was. Like, it was funny because at the beginning of the conversation, it was, what is this thing? It doesn't make sense. And I get it. And it would be another half an hour with you to actually get into that. But once they got it,
I'm holding you to that.
Oh, we'll do this. I'm happy to. If they can get it, you can get it. So the initial part of the conversation is, what is this thing? And then you could see, or I could read the questions and you could see the gears turning, and it turned into, how do I get some of this thing? How do I use some of this thing? How does this fit into the broader picture? So for them, yeah, it was talking about crypto. For my son upstairs, it could be a game of Monopoly. For another child, it could be a conversation, or for the younger ones, it could be playing restaurant or grocery store in their bedroom. So it depends on the child, it depends on where they are, it depends on what they like. So what do I like? I like when they're engaged with me, and wherever I need to go to them to get them engaged with me is the thing I like. So I'm having a workshop with some high school students in December. I'm hoping that, I'm going to do a bit of budgeting with them. I'm hoping my budgeting activity will get their juices flowing as well. I'm going to be talking to them about goal setting and how we use, our financial knowledge to kind of reach those goals that we want. Again, you have to go where they are. Your question is asking where I want to be, but not to put you on the spot, but that's the wrong question. The question is, where are they? And what do they need, and what do they want, and what will engage them, which is why I've tried to put so many different activities and resources in the book. One of the sections talks about some dialogue prompts. So if your child's talking about borrowing, or talking about what is that card that you're sticking into that machine, and I don't understand, like, that is your opportunity to say, hey, this child is interested in electronic money, or just trying to figure out how transactions happen, or how money flows from place to place. Like, it is going, and this is just the way it is. You have to go to them. You have to go to where they are. Where are they interested in? What are they asking you about? What's getting their juices flowing? So what's the thing that gets me excited is finding out what's exciting them, and then I'm going there. That's the thing I want to do. That's what I want.
You have passed Clifton, you passed the test big time. You said that your parents were educators, or your father was an educator, or your parents were educators, but educators want to hear you say that student voice. What is it that they're interested in? And we're going to bring it on. Of course, I see 100% you have in numbers, but I also got to tell you that Michael Avis, I don't know if you know people who own Avis Rent Car, but if you do, I want to know you even more. But Michael Avis, though, in seriousness, he says, congrats, Cliff. And to all of you too who are there, you can type into the chat. You can send love to Clifton. You can ask him hard questions like, what is his shoe size? But but Clifton, what I wanted to ask you is about taxes, because we're going to soon move to tax season. And one thing in life that you're certain about, you're born, you die, and you pay taxes. That's what people say in finance. Yeah, taxes. So if I'm lying in my bed and I'm a 5-year-old, are you going to charge me taxes for the square, the space I'm taking up? How does that work in my house?
I am not charging you taxes. I am no government. I do not have the authority to charge you taxes.
Michael Avis hates taxes too. That's what
but with that said, I am a strong advocate for not paying anyone else's taxes and not giving any money away that I don't need to. So I say that for 2 reasons. So I know a lot of figuring out taxes is complicated, especially when we're talking sales tax, and especially when we're talking about little kids, because we're talking percentages. The math doesn't come intuitively for a little one, right? So I know a lot of folks, what they'll do, and I don't blame them, it makes sense. They say you pay the sticker price on whatever the item is that you're buying. Let's say they have an allowance, they go to the dollar store, they see something, I say dollar store, but they see something's $2 or $3 or what have you, and they say, you pay the sticker price, I pay the taxes. I say, don't do that. I say you need to give them the opportunity to understand what taxes are. Let them see, you know what, there is a surcharge on this item, and that's called taxes. In this case, what we're talking about is sales tax. And then again, it sparks another conversation. Well, why am I paying more than the things cost? That doesn't make any sense. Well, no, it makes sense because we use, or our government uses, or we the people use our sales tax to pay for the roads, the bridges, the healthcare, the this, the that, the school that you go to. So again, it's another opportunity to engage them into more conversation, more dialogue about the subject matter. And you only get that if you give them the opportunity to pay it. The other piece of it is, we pay tax, we feel the hit. Why shouldn't they? And I don't mean that to be facetious, but why, like, let them feel the entire experience of a transaction. So that's one piece on the taxes. The other part I mentioned is, I don't want anyone paying more than they have to. So I tell a story in my book about how when I was rather young, I started my first job. I had my income tax deducted right away, but I was really young and I didn't make that much. My dad, fortunately, did my taxes at the end of the year. Most of those taxes that I paid, most of those income taxes I paid, came back to me in a refund at the end of the year. Had I not filed my taxes, had I not done my taxes, had my dad not engaged me in that conversation and that discussion about taxes and income taxes, a different type of tax we're talking about now, I would have paid more than I needed to. So it's only in talking about, discussing, doing our taxes, filing our taxes, that we make sure that we're, paying what we should, not paying too much. If you do find that you're paying too much, you make the adjustments on your tax forms at work, what have you. But with regards to the kids, when you're doing your taxes at the end of the year, if you're doing your taxes at the end of the year, it's another time to bring them in to discuss what you're doing. What is this thing? Show them your T4. This is how much I made. This is how much we got to take home. See the difference, but explain what that money went to. And I know it's high level, we're paying for these things, we're paying for those things, but it's another opportunity for them to see, because at some point, hopefully, they'll be getting a paycheck too. And I know that first paycheck's always a shock, and it should be. That's okay. But at least they'll be a little bit more prepared for it. At least they'll have a better understanding for it. And if that's the first time they get to see it, that's fine. It's just another opportunity for you to talk to them about it and explain to them what's happening.
Well, also included in the book, Beautiful People, is a chapter looking at taxation and taxes. So this is all also included. And for those who are joining us, for those who are thinking, oh my God, this sounds so fascinating. What is it that I'm listening to? We're speaking to Clifton Corbin, A Parent's Guide to Raising Financially Literate Children, Your Kids, Their Money. At the bottom here is the piggy bank. And we talked about the green being on the stuff. Do you know the history of the piggy bank and why we call it piggy banks?
So it's in there. I'm not going to give a spoiler. I know you're looking for it. It is in there, the rationale for why we call it a piggy bank. But I will say this, and again, it's a bit of a spoiler for anyone who's considering purchasing the book. I hate piggy banks. Okay. I hate them. That's why it's broken on my cover. I do not like piggy banks. I do not think they're a good means of explaining how money works to our children. There's a lot of folks who reference this. I'm not the first. I will fully give credit where credit's due. It's on other people's covers, but I'm a strong believer in having clear jars labeled with, the different accounts that our children are using, whether it be give, save, donate, spend, having those clearly labeled on the jars, because you can't see how much you have in a piggy bank. I don't know anyone, or maybe I don't think I know anyone who would open a bank account, put their money in, and never be able to see how much they had. And the only way they could see how much they had is either break it open or shake it. Like, that doesn't make, that's not. So I want people to get away from the piggy bank, because it's not banking. It's not how we bank. I know even talking about dealing with cash is kind of interesting now, because we've all kind of adopted more digital. And I will encourage, go digital when your child is ready. But I think the piggy bank is just, it's a dated piece of
the reason I asked you about that, and this is the storyteller in me. When I was a child and I went to school in Barbados, and my grandmother, one of the things that she raised were pigs. And so we each had a pig,
Mhm.
and that was our piggy bank. So
Mhm.
we all looked after the pig, and this is right across cultures, right? And at the end of whatever that season, when the pig came to fruition and our pigs had names, and I knew my pig and my uncle knew his pig. So then we had like 5 pigs, right? And the man next door to my house was a butcher. And then that was his business and role in our
His profession.
community, right? So all the kids in the community, that's where your Christmas money came from. That's where your going to school money came from. That's where the money to take you on the trips.
Mhm.
And so the pig was, I gotta say, slaughtered. Back then you say the pig killed, but oh my God, I traumatized 10,000 people. Like I say, right? So the pig is slaughtered, and we see the whole execution of that. We see the people come in to engage the pig and to buy the various parts of it. And also too, there's class in that. So people with more money get the better part of the pig, and on and on. But as children, you watch that economics. But your pig was the bank. So sometimes I think when people, say, where did that come from? It might have come from the raising of animals back in or more rural times, in farming communities and in poor people. And I think of when I go to some of the developing worlds and you see pigs run all over the place. And I think, oh, there's a million little piggy banks running around, right? Somebody pop one of those, you good. So that's always my little bit of humor, and fascinated with where these names come from and how over the years we still continue to use them and that uses. But you are absolutely right. And I can't think of any time I've heard it described like that, like you put in money in that thing and you don't know how much money, and you think like, suppose like it just evaporates.
Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And that's the other part of it, is that if you think about most of us who are managing money, we have accounts, right? We put our money here to make sure it's there for, saving, rainy day fund, what have you. We put our money over here to make sure it's there for groceries or what have you. The piggy bank, the one vessel to hold it all, if I can use some Lord of the Rings slang, it doesn't work. It doesn't teach accounting, which is necessary.
Yes. One of the things too, for all our viewers, again, Clifton Corbin has also produced the book as an audiobook, which is fantastic. That also give access for people with abilities. You can play it in your car, and as you're taking trips and your children are having conversations, because sometimes in those journeys, they're the really meaty conversations that we can have. It's available on audio book. And I believe, who is the person who did the voiceover for you? You want to shout out that person?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Jamil Nielsen, I've already had a couple kudos on his voice, and it was a great project working with him. I was so grateful that I could work with him on this one.
Beautiful. And it will be available at all fine bookstores across this country, and
especially yours.
Especially yes, and a different book list, and also too from people who are tuning in from Trinidad, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, from which will soon become the Republic of Barbados, Jamaica, wherever you are in the U.S. This is an incredible book. I love the fact that it's Canadian, and we had this conversation earlier, sometime before. Sometimes when we buy books around finance, things dealing with numeracy or numbers, and sometimes we can have empirical measurement. Sometimes when we put those things in the hands of educators here, they say, we are more metric based, all those kind of things. These are some of the considerations that we've seen Clifton Corbin is included in the book. So I really strongly encourage people. It's hot. It's hot for the holiday season. And also too, as we begin to go through the season of Kwanzaa, as we look at self-determination, Kujichagulia, Ujima, cooperative economics. And of course, we will start our New Year's resolutions with many contracts. Just imagine at the top of the year, you're going to have your family around and everybody's going to have their little contract. How fun that is. You're not going to be making any more New Year's resolutions in your head, and then like 5 minutes later you go back. You forget them. But in this way, we can have an informed, a fun, and a magical way of how we can speak into finance and financial matters with our children. And I'm going to brag for you now, Clifton, and it is set out the book in 5 chapters, in 5 parts, I should say, 5 parts. Why do kids need to be financially literate? And I think you've responded to a lot of that. Wealth matters. Again, we are very present within the conversation. Acquiring money. Oh, I saw like every child wants to get to that part first. And I'm sure you say to them, no, you got to go step 1 and step 2 before you get to step 3.
You pick where you, like I said, you go where they are. You go where they are.
Yes. What's your favorite part of the book? What's that part of the book that you just like, oh, when you're by yourself and nobody's listening, you just go over, you read that part all, you go, Clifton.
I think I mentioned it already. It has to be the end. I speak about the need for appreciation and gratitude. It's a big piece of understanding how to be comfortable with where you are. Like if you are in a situation like I was in my early 20s, deep in debt, if I could have found a way to be appreciative for the things I still had at that point, I think I would have avoided a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. I'm older now. I've got a great family. I've got a lot of blessings. So I can definitely speak to being appreciative of what I have now. But I think teaching our children how to be appreciative of what they have can help to stem off some of that need and want for more. We're coming up on the holiday season, as you mentioned, and I'm not opposed to giving stuff to the kids. Like, this is a great time of year. Like, we should be celebrating as much as we can, but it can become a year-round thing where it's all about wanting more and feeling the need to have more. And I feel like the only way, when you've got commercials coming at you from every angle and you've got ads coming at you at every minute and you're constantly seeing what you could have, the only way to start feeling comfortable with what you do have is to speak to them and give them tools to appreciate what they have. That last section in the book, I was very fortunate. There's two resources that I mentioned. There's a gratitude journal by Spark Journals, and it's basically a journal for children to go through and start talking about how the people in their lives are heroes and how the things that they have are what they need, and to be grateful and build that, that mindfulness to start appreciating what they have. And there's another resource in there called Wish and Give. It's a resource to help when let's say you're doing a birthday, some type of an event. Again, it's one of those times where kids are thinking about me, what can I get? But it's a website where you can coordinate with them so that some of the money you get from, let's say, your birthday gifts, and then some of that money can be given away to a charity. And that doesn't necessarily just need to be for kids and birthday parties. That could be for any event. Let's say you're doing some event over the holidays, you can use Wish and Give for that as well. So those two resources and that section in general is probably my favorite. And just that last section, it talks a lot about using money and how we need to be very mindful about how we feel when we're using money. There's a lot of emotion that comes up when we talk about money, especially for adults, but it happens with the kids too. I talk about, shopping therapy is a thing. Let's be honest, we've all been home for way too long. Some of the ways some of us have been able to get through the pandemic has been buying and using that as a way to boost us up. And I don't fault anyone for getting through this pandemic any way that they had to, but acknowledging the need to use retail therapy is something that I think we need to do, especially with our kids, to give them the understanding that just buying isn't what's going to get you happy. It's not going to keep you happy. It might give you a little boost, and sometimes we all need a little boost, and that's okay. But being aware of what our purchases and what our debt and what our wealth in the bank, how all of that makes us feel, I think it's a critical piece of teaching our children and keeping ourselves grounded and making sure we understand how we're feeling.
Your parents are big inspirations for you, your children, your partner in life. outside of that immediate family, who else in this world has inspired you, or when you think about them, you think this is a good model? This is someone who has had an impact on my life. I want to know that, and I also want to know, what do you do for fun?
The first question is a challenging one. I'm a big reader, so I read a lot of biographies, and I tend, I don't know why, but I go to a lot of the presidents, the U.S. presidents, for some reason. So I've read Lincoln's biography, and I've got Obama's on my bookshelf, and I've read Grant and all these others. I'm inspired by big leaders who've made big changes. I don't know if there's any one that inspires me more than any other. It's the idea of leading and doing the hard thing in the face of adversity. Like that's inspiring to me. You mentioned my immediate family. I have a very large extended family, and they've always been supportive and encouraging. And in my immediate family, there's also my sister and her kids and her husband. So there's a lot of family support lifting me up. I mentioned in the acknowledgements, like I would need an entire another book just to talk about all the people who've helped to lift me up. So there's no ends of inspiration just from my family alone. And then what do I do for fun? I think I mentioned in my bio, I used to be a DJ once upon a time. I've got I've got my turntable set up beside me. It's almost
like you read my mind what the next question I was going to ask you. Tell me about that. Tell us about that. Yes.
Oh man. So I don't remember how old I was, but I had an uncle who migrated to Canada from Trinidad, and he was very into music, and he got me into DJing when I was in my early teens, and I kind of always stuck with it. And then I packed it up because I realized at some point I either had to keep playing music or graduate. It couldn't be both. It had to be one or the other. So I packed up my records, I packed up my turntables, and I put them aside. And then last year, I think it was for Caravana, I was like, I need to do something. I've been stuck in this house for far too long. I need to do something. So I pulled out the turntables. I set up a table on my front porch, got the speakers out, and I did it wasn't an official blocko. It was just a little line. But it was. Are
you saying that because you're on a public platform? It was an official blocko. I love it. I like to censor it.
I did. I have mentioned insurance in this conversation, so yes. But it was a lot of fun. The neighbors came out. We had a ton of fun. And then after that, my wife looked at me and she's like, "That's the happiest I've seen you in months." She's like, "You need to keep those out. You need to find a space for them in the house." So I set them up in the basement, and I've been messing around ever since.
Yeah. Well, it is almost like you read my mind, because I was going to ask what music you played while you wrote the book. Well, what's your favorite music? But oftentimes when people are writing, they have some music soundtrack, and then you can feel that pulse, and you can feel the rhythm in the writing. If I'm listening to jazz, you can see that can translate into my writing. So I was curious about your choice of music.
Sure. I don't listen to anything when I'm writing, but when I'm listening, I am I guess you'd call me cross platform. I play almost anything, but I love my soca, I love my reggae, I love my hip hop. That's my happy place. And
what's a money song in soca?
So that's my
like money songs in soca. The next book, you got to make sure to drop that in. If you did already.
I'm hoping one day I can collaborate with another one of my cousins who's also quite the artist and creator, and we can write a book that's focused on some of the beautiful things that happen in Trinidad at some point. So that'll be my fiction book at some point, or maybe nonfiction. We'll see. But yeah, soca is definitely it's definitely run through the course of my life for sure.
Well, there's another congratulations, son. Well done. We are very proud of your accomplishment and the launch of your book. And may all the sales of your book go to our very early retirement. But this is always good when we can, people can lift us up people can acknowledge our efforts and also to cheer us on. During the course of our conversation, a smile came on your face and your eyes lit up. It came when you spoke about your son, about your children, and about your family. And that smile and your eyes lit up again also when I asked the question of how to engage with students. And you got so excited in speaking about the grade middle school class that you were speaking to. And then you got excited thinking about speaking going forward to the high school. So that shows me that in the business of numbers and in finance, you're a person of addition and multiplication. You are desirous to see people added into this sector of finance, being more knowledgeable about money and the things. And we definitely saw how that passion came through as you got excited, talking about the contracts and very simple everyday things that we can do within our families, in our households, however those families are constructed, just to be clear with people. So this has been really a privilege for me on November the 19th to be in conversation with you. We wish you every success with the book. So for people, again, who are viewing, make sure you spread the word. We're going to be doing that on our end. This podcast is going to be archived with our Facebook, and then we will transfer it later onto our YouTube channel, A Different Book List Cultural Center, The People's Residence. And again, thank you, Clifton Corbin, for bringing us this incredible book. And it's not only something I would like to suggest that it's a parent's guide, but even by just reading it, I can see it as something you can put into the hands of any student, of any kid, just to fuel and develop that curiosity. And the price of the book is very affordable. And we're not going to tell you, because I know you're going to be calling all up and saying, like, I need me 2,000 copies. And some kid is going to say, like, what's the tax on it? There you go. Already we have just started engaging in the book. And of course, the book is available at A Different Book List, www.adifferentbooklist.com. So thank you. Thank you. Any parting words you would like to say to the world?
There's so many, but I feel like it's going to be like an Oscars or Grammy where I get the hook. So I'm going to try to keep this brief. So much thanks and appreciation, as I said already, to all of the people out there who have supported me, early readers, all of the people who've shared and commented on all the different social platforms. I owe you so many thanks. And a big thank you to you, Ida, and all the folks at A Different Book List. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you and coordinating this event. I said it to you before in private, and I'd like to say it here on this public platform. A Different Book List has done so many wonderful things for the Toronto community and for the school boards across Ontario. I am so grateful that I was able to coordinate with you and have my book on your shelves. That's my privilege. And I mean that very sincerely. Thank you so much. Looking forward for future collaborations and more engagement. Have a wonderful and fantastic weekend. And everybody is bigging you up. Thank you for writing this, Cliff. Congrats. All of the tributes are coming in. So enough respect. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.